When you start a relationship with a narcissist, one of the most difficult things to realize, usually much too late, is that you were never truly seen as a real person. You were not noticed as a whole human being with your own inner life. You were judged, measured, and given a role to play. That role was not based on your real personality or your true identity. It was chosen only by what you could offer to support the narcissist's weak internal story about themselves. This is the painful reality. To a narcissist, you are not met as a person with your own mind. You are treated like an object, something to be used. This is not a minor detail. It shows a deep inability to form a real human bond, the kind that Martin Buber described as the I-thou connection, where two people meet as equals. The narcissist cannot do this. Their entire psychological framework is built around defense rather than true connection. They interact with others as tools for their emotional survival. In their thinking, you are not a person with feelings and dreams. You are a mirror created to reflect back the image they need to believe about themselves, a mirror meant to reinforce their huge sense of importance, their belief that they are better than others, or sometimes their belief that they are constant victims. You exist to admire them, to take the blame for them, to follow their rules, and most importantly, to never threaten the image they are desperately trying to keep alive. This image is everything to them. A narcissist is not just selfish in the way people sometimes are. They are constantly fighting off an inner collapse. Their sense of self is thin and shaky. It does not have the solid foundation that real confidence comes from. It is not supported by honesty, responsibility, or true self-awareness, so they rely on others to keep their self-esteem going. And that is where you come into the story. You were given a role, the caregiver, the admirer, the one who takes the blame, the one who carries all the emotions, the one who fixes problems, the one who forgives too easily. These are roles, not genuine relationships. And the moment you start stepping out of that role, the moment you set boundaries, speak your needs, or grow in a direction they cannot control, the narcissist does not try to understand you. They do not adjust. They simply change their approach. They may begin to devalue you, they may throw you away, but it all comes from the same internal machine. You no longer support the illusion they are trying to keep going. This is the central point. Your value to them depends on how well you fit their internal script. You see this pattern everywhere, in romantic relationships where the moment you stop accepting bad behavior, you suddenly become too much or too difficult. In families where a child who questions the narcissistic parent's version of events becomes the target of blame or is pushed away. In workplaces where a skilled employee threatens a narcissistic boss and ends up being undermined, lied about, or forced out. This is not normal conflict between two people. This is treating a person as an object. You are not allowed to exist as yourself outside of the narcissist's view. Many people ask if narcissists know what they are doing. The answer is complex. On a surface level, maybe they don't fully realize it, but deeper down, yes, they understand enough to know that they take more than they give. They know, even if they won't admit it, that they treat others as tools rather than equals. And this is where the coldness starts. You could give everything, your love, your time, your empathy, and they would still see you as replaceable because what they connect to is not you. It is what you bring them: praise, approval, obedience, emotional support. If you stop giving those things, your humanity becomes inconvenient. And oddly enough, they will often accuse you of being selfish or distant. That is pure projection. What they really believe deep down is that they deserve your loyalty no matter how they behave. That belief is built into the relationship from the very start. And when you stop giving what they expect, when you finally see the manipulation and pull away, they feel betrayed. Not because they care about you, but because you stopped supporting the story they created. You changed the script. And in their world, only they are allowed to do that. This is why people say a narcissist never truly loved you. It is not just a saying, it is a painful truth. They did not love you. They loved what you did for them. They were not connecting with your heart, your hopes, your inner life. They were connecting with their own need to be admired, obeyed, and kept in control. The saddest part is that you may have spent months or years believing that your worth depended on how well you played the role they gave you. But that was not love. It was a one-sided trade disguised as a close relationship. What makes relationships with a narcissist even more confusing is this. The very qualities that attract the narcissist to you at the beginning are often the same qualities they later punish you for. Your strength, your emotional understanding, your independence, your kindness. These traits draw them in, but not because they want to respect them. They want to own them. You represent something they do not have inside themselves. And in their way of seeing the world, anything they lack must be controlled or destroyed. There is no middle ground. In the early stages, they see you as perfect. This is the classic beginning. You are seen as amazing, impressive, perceptive, admirable. You seem flawless to them, but this admiration does not come from truly understanding who you are. It comes from their own thoughts. They see a fantasy version of you that fits their needs. As long as you don't break that fantasy, everything seems fine. But eventually, something changes. Maybe you speak up about something unfair. Maybe you succeed in an area where they feel insecure. Maybe you hold them responsible for their actions. Suddenly, your strength becomes a threat in their mind, not an advantage. Now they are stuck. They want the benefits you bring, but they feel attacked by your independence. So they begin to slowly tear you down. At first, it is subtle, sarcasm, small insults hidden inside jokes, hints of disapproval, coldness. Later, it becomes harsher, emotional manipulation, emotional punishment. They do this because deep inside they know they cannot match your level of emotional depth or toughness. Instead of being motivated to improve, they feel small next to you. And instead of admitting that, they blame you. They say you are too emotional, too demanding, too strong, too sensitive, too much. But in reality, your presence reveals the weakness they try to hide. And that is something they cannot accept. To understand this fully, we need to look deeper. Real strength is not control or domination. Real strength is inner integrity. It is the ability to stay steady without pretending. It is the ability to face the truth instead of running from it. When you bring this kind of strength into a relationship with a narcissist, you are not just threatening their pride. You are threatening the entire structure of their inner world. Their world is built on lies, self-deception, manipulation, and managing their image. Your clarity disturbs that system. Your empathy makes it harder for them to hide. Your insight makes their behavior clear. Empathy is especially dangerous to them. True empathy sees contradictions. True empathy asks honest questions. True empathy notices when something is wrong. This kind of awareness is too much for someone who survives by pretending. So instead of allowing themselves to be seen, they attack. They twist your words, they flip the story, they make you feel guilty for noticing the truth. It is not that they cannot see your strength. They absolutely can. They just cannot let you keep it unless they control it. And if they cannot control it, they would rather weaken it. This is why so many people who have been in relationships with narcissists feel confused, exhausted, or broken. Their strength was not just ignored, it was used against them. They were made to feel wrong for being whole. This situation is deeply sad because the narcissist ends up destroying the very thing that first attracted them. They ruin the connection that might have helped them grow. Not because they are evil, but because they are emotionally unable. They do not know how to be close to someone who does not focus entirely on them. And so your strength becomes the reason they use to justify their harmful behavior. They hate it because it reminds them of what they cannot face inside themselves, the emptiness, the insecurity, the fear of being ordinary. So, what does this mean for you, the one caught in the middle of this strange and painful cycle? It means you must learn the difference between being valued and being used. You must stop confusing admiration with love when the admiration is only there to control you. And most importantly, you must understand that your strength was never the problem. Your strength is simply the thing the narcissist could not bend to fit their fantasy. Your strength is the threat to their illusion, and it always will be. You can finally stop carrying the responsibility for their discomfort. You can finally stop changing yourself into smaller shapes to protect their weak ego. You can stop saying sorry for feelings that were real and reactions that were human. You can stop trying to be the shield for someone who never planned to protect you in return. This is the turning point that many people reach only after a long and painful struggle, the moment when you realize that your suffering was never the problem. The problem was the environment that demanded you stay silent about it. Once you see this clearly, the entire pattern begins to fall apart. You start noticing how many times you held yourself back just to make them feel safe. You remember all the moments when you softened your truth, not because it was wrong, but because you feared the explosion that would come if you dared to speak honestly. You see how you twisted yourself into someone you did not recognize, not out of love, but out of a need to survive. And as this understanding settles into your mind, something inside you starts to grow, slowly but steadily, like a truth you can no longer keep quiet. You begin reclaiming parts of yourself that you didn't even realize you had given away. The sound of your own thoughts becomes clearer. The heavy weight on your chest begins to lift. The confusion that once wrapped itself around your emotions starts to break apart. And in that clarity, you finally understand that the narcissist's reactions were never reflections of your worth. They were reflections of their fear, their hunger for control, their emptiness that always needed to consume something to feel whole. This is the part that hurts the most at first, because it forces you to face the fact that no amount of love, patience, effort, sacrifice, or loyalty could have changed the outcome. Not because you were lacking, but because they were incapable. They were unable to meet you as an equal. They were unable to see you as an equal. They were unable to care about your feelings without seeing them as threats. And they were unable to value your heart without wanting to own it. But this truth is also what frees you. When you understand that the narcissist's envy, their cruelty, and their emotional games were rooted in their own emptiness, you stop trying to fix what was never yours to repair. You stop trying to prove your value to someone who was determined not to see it. You stop giving explanations to someone who only twisted them. You stop hoping for empathy from someone who only used your openness as a weapon. Slowly, your energy returns. Your inner voice grows louder. The world around you starts to look a little brighter. Not because everything magically becomes perfect, but because the fog created by their chaos begins to clear. You start remembering what peace feels like. You start remembering what joy feels like without the burden of someone else's judgment pressing down on it. You start feeling your own strength again, the strength that was always inside you but hidden under their noise. And the more you step into this new space, the more you realize something important. Their envy was never about you being too much. It was about them being too little. It was about their inability to create the emotional depth you carry naturally. It was about their frustration with the fact that you could feel deeply, love honestly, and connect without pretending. These qualities confused them, threatened them, and angered them because they couldn't copy them. And rather than learn from you, they chose to punish you for having what they lacked. This is why your healing is your liberation. Every step you take away from their influence weakens the hold they once had on your mind. Every moment of clarity breaks another part of the old story they trapped you in. Every breath you take without fear restores a part of you that they tried to dim, and with time you begin to see that your emotional depth was never a burden. It was never a fault. It was never a sign of weakness. It was the very thing that made you powerful, your ability to care, to feel, to reflect, to grow, to empathize, to rebuild yourself even after being hurt. These are strengths they could never possess. These are qualities they tried to destroy because they exposed their own hollowness. And the day you fully realize this is the day the grip they had on your life finally breaks. You begin to improve in ways you didn't expect. You begin to stand in your truth without shrinking. You begin to see relationships differently. You begin to choose yourself in moments where you once abandoned yourself. And you begin to understand that your value was never dependent on their ability to recognize it. When you reach this level of awareness, something amazing happens. The narcissist loses the power they once held, not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped feeding the cycle. You stopped taking part in their emotional games. You stopped letting their projections define you. And most importantly, you stopped believing the lies they built around you. From this point on, you walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with a quiet strength that doesn't need approval. You move with an inner steadiness that comes from knowing who you are, not who they told you to be. And that inner freedom, the very thing they feared, envied, and tried to destroy, is what rebuilds your life. You become whole again, not because they finally gave you peace, but because you finally gave it to yourself. You reclaim your story, your voice, your heart, your future, and as you do, the truth becomes clear. You were never the weak one. You were the light they tried to dim. You were the strength they tried to undermine. You were the soul they could never become. And now that you see it clearly, nothing and no one can take that truth from you.